Everybody's still here. All right. So the first question that we were supposed to discuss was about health literacy. We're supposed to talk about what it is and why is it important for health education promotion. What do you guys think?
Well, you can't really promote health if you don't know how to communicate that with other people. And depending on your audience, will depend on your approach. So
That's the way I understood it as well. I kind of figured it was like the difference between doing your job and effectively doing your job. You can put out a bunch of words, but like you haven't really done your job until those words mean something to someone.
Yeah, that's what it talks a lot about other questions about health dissemination. That's what I kind of think health dissemination is because it's just kind of throwing information out there that might not be relevant or applicable or even understandable for the target population. Am I really behind? I can't hear anything. Is anybody talking?
I am now.
Okay, sorry. Okay. So we talked about health literacy. So Russ was supposed to talk about how the action communication model works and its importance in communication for behavior change. So the action communication model, how does that work?
I was kind of confused on this one, so I'd like to know too.
So just looking at the model, it's a sender sending out a message.
It's like the basic one, right?
Yeah, but instead of it just being a one-way where it's just going to the receiver is giving feedback, is what I'm seeing. So it's just, I don't know, it looks like a conversation to me.
From what I understood, what they did is they built on each other. Like you had the action model, and then you had the interaction model, and then the transaction, and then the intermediate.
Oh yeah. I see what you're saying. Right.
I liked how they explained that because if you break it down, all those steps are in our communication, and the thing that stood out to me on that was the encoding and the decoding, and it's just like what you guys said, one of you said about if you're not doing it effectively, it's not going to carry very far. So there's lots of ways how I encode something. The perfect example for me is between my wife and I. We both communicate a little differently, and the meaning behind our communication may come across completely different. I seem to decode my wife's messages a lot worse than the other way around. So like I'll think she's saying this, but she's really saying this. And so it's how we encode it, I guess they say, and then also how the other person decodes it. Is how knowing that, can change how we communicate. I thought it was interesting how they put it all in that diagram. It made sense to me.
Yeah, I had it mixed up with the interaction model when I was explaining it. So yeah, you're right. I went back.
That makes a lot more sense to me. I remember, I think it was in my cognition class or my sensation and perception class, they talked about how on a more fundamental level, how we learn things and how our brain processes new information. and they talked a lot about encoding and decoding. And so it makes sense that when we're transmitting information to one another, it's an idea that we may have formed pictures about and assumptions about in our head that when we think about it, it's like, oh yeah, it just makes sense because of this, this, and this, what we don't even think about. And so when we put that information out, somebody else has to take that and say, okay, what are the basic assumptions? And if we haven't made it clear to them or worked with their basic assumptions, they can understand it in a lot different way, and that can be very confusing to them.
Mm-hmm.
I apologize, my computer freaked out and I missed like the past 3 minutes.
Nothing special.
Okay. So we're also supposed to talk about the difference between the theory and evidence-based interventions, and then the difference between. So what's the difference with something's theory-based dissemination and throwing information out there?
I heard like every other word. I don't know if anyone else had the same thing. Can you say that again?
I heard every other word but the other words that you didn't hear, so.
So let's combine and then we'll have a complete thought.
Sounds good.
Funny.
Could you say that again, Sarah? Hello?
She's in and out.
So theory-based, and then get any of that.
No, but I'm looking at the questions if you want me to read it off.
Thanks. Sorry, my computer or my internet or something's freaking out, and I apologize. So that
No
would
problem.
be great.
Yeah, the third question is, what is the difference between theory/evidence-based interventions and health dissemination? So the difference between theories and evidence and interventions and health dissemination. And the definition of dissemination is spreading something, especially information, widely. In case anybody was wondering, because I was. So the difference between theories and evidence, I guess. Let me.
I think to me it's saying what's the difference between an intervention and health dissemination. I think health dissemination really is just putting the information out there, and even as far as the information goes, that information can be a component to your intervention. If you think about the model that we dealt with last week, readings was part of the I'm drawing a blank right now. Before you're taking action, totally drawing a blank on what the
Proceed, precede, is it?
Yes.
Or precede, proceed, something like that?
Yeah, part of the model last week. The before you're taking the action, you were reading up on consequences or risk behaviors or different things like that, and reading about even individuals who are testifying, if you will, of the good of the health behavior change. And so I think health dissemination can be a component of an intervention. It's definitely not an intervention. Anyone disagree on that?
That makes sense.
Yeah, I'm going to try again. Tell me if you can't hear me. I apologize. But I thought about like theory-based, how so much of interventions is based upon previous models and things that have been proven to be effective. And so I think part of an important, like why we need it to be theory-based is because it's been like trial and error and perfected and refined to know that it's actually effective and it can actually change behavior. Did you get any of that?
Yep, we got it.
Okay, cool. Does anybody else have any other thoughts on theory-based interventions or the benefits or what health dissemination is? If not, we could just move on.
I think that's good.
Okay.
Let's move on.
Okay. I mean, it's pretty self-explanatory. So the only other thing we're supposed to talk about is the difference between, again, health dissemination and then behavior change communication. So the difference, I think, between health dissemination and communication. Any thoughts on that? Real talkative tonight, huh?
I think everybody's just really tired. Like, I am so tired. I am fighting to be awake right now.
Okay.
Well, I think it's similar to the differences between your interventions and your dissemination. You've got dissemination that's sharing information, and I think health behavior change communication is discussing your steps of changing. So you've got the information that's being shared with you, but an actual change of communication is an interaction, a plan that's being put into place, if you will. If someone else sees that differently, certainly pipe in.
I think it makes sense because it's on both levels. So it's like you're giving and receiving information instead of just like someone throwing or just saying everything to you. You can actually ask questions or communicate back and forth. So I think that's important too, which you mentioned.
I imagine the dissemination as like something that goes out to that is more widely spread, right? More general and whatnot, whereas the other is more personal, the health communication. It's more individual to making a change, whereas the other's like, here's some suggestions kind of thing.
Yeah, that makes sense. Sounds good. Anybody else have any other thoughts on that? Otherwise, we can move on. Okay, and then we're supposed to talk about the assignment. So it's paper. It's a paper format, and there's like 4 different sections that need to be in the paper. It needs to be at least 2 to 4 pages, I believe. APA citations. It's really not that bad. You get to pick one of the scenarios from the beginning. So the first one is like how you have to develop an intervention to prevent the spread of the flu on campus at BOUI. And then the other option is helping parents get their children vaccinated. So you get to choose one of those, and then you pick a target population, you list the constructs of the behavior model or theory that you choose, and then you define the intervention, and then you do the impact. You just type it up.
Yeah, like this one I thought was going to be, like when I saw 2 to 4 pages and come up with your interventions and stuff, I was like, man, this is going to be terrible. But after I actually started in with it and took it step by step like they list in the instructions, it really wasn't that bad.
Right.
Particularly, like the last couple weeks for our assignments, we've had to come up with interventions from the list of 8 whatevers, and instead of like typing it into a little table now, it's just like typing out the paper. So.
Yeah, I'm hoping that the previous week's assignments will help me be able to build a no fluff polished paper, as they put it in here.
Are any of you guys doing the immunization approach?
I was thinking about it, but I'm not anti-immunization, but I'm pro a delayed schedule, so I don't know if I should be allowed to do that one.
That's how I feel. Like I haven't. Yeah. Mhm. I thought it was interesting that it came up because it can be so controversial.
Yeah, especially right now. That's the one I did.
Totally. I believe in them. I just don't believe in pumping small babies full of like 8 shots at a time. So my daughter was on a delayed schedule. She was about 6 months behind, and she would only get 1 to 2 shots at a time because I felt like if she's going to have an allergic reaction or something, that I was. But if she had like 4 in each leg, how was I going to know which one it was? So
I haven't even started when he's 9 months.
I thought about
So I kind of approached. Sorry, go ahead.
nothing. I was just saying that word. But
Are you guys just talking about the papers to write? I just lost internet connection, so I'm sorry.
Yeah. The different approaches.
I thought of the immunization one, like more as approaching those. I picked a population that doesn't really have access to like adequate insurance or health care. So I more made it like, oh, here's a free clinic that they can go to and not have to worry about affording it. So I kind of focused more on that, so it's like
Yeah, absolutely.
they can have access. I think.
well, I think too, like another good one for that would be like, as much as I hate saying this, like really young teen moms, because they're probably not even done with their immunizations yet.
That's true. They don't know. That's true.
So they have no idea. I mean, even me at 27, when I had my daughter, I had no idea about like how many she was gonna have to get for the first time you have a baby. So I was overwhelmed.
Yeah. It's the nice thing about the communication model, too, is that what you're supposed to pick. Because a lot of it's just about information and communicating to the population.
Yeah.
I also think that when you're thinking about either of these approaches or either of these topics, is that probably putting in somewhere of a patient education about how vaccines work. Because a lot of people think that they immediately get a vaccine and they are 100% covered immediately, when in reality, most vaccines take about 2 weeks to come into effect. So they still should be, washing their hands, covering their mouth and nose when they're coughing and sneezing. If they see somebody that's sick, say I love you, but stay away from me for a bit there.
Especially with the flu vaccination. Debate about it.
We had to have it for work. I'm a CNA, and we had to get it, or we had to cover our mouths for 6 months.
Yep.
My oldest just went to Weld County Health today to start his vaccination process to be able to go on his mission to Peru. And one of the requirements to be a missionary is actually to get the flu vaccine.
Interesting.
They probably just want to cover you, especially if you're going to somewhere like Peru, or if you're not staying stateside.
Yep.
I think it's just one of those that's so fickle, the flu vaccine, because it's so different.
I've never gotten it before. I have never gotten the flu shot, and I've never had the flu, because I think it's funny that with the flu shot, it's like, if you get the flu shot, you are 50% covered. If you don't get the flu shot, you are 50% covered, or whatever. So.
Yeah, that's one of the funnier ones, for sure.
Well, the thing about this year's flu vaccine that's really nice, and the thing that people forget about, is the flu vaccine covers the major strains that are going to put you in the hospital potentially. It's not every single strain. And this year's strain, or this year's vaccine covers 4, 2 in the A strains and 2 in the B strains. And they're 2 on each side of the most popular when you see statistics as people that have been hospitalized from having influenza. So the flu vaccine can help diminish the side effects of having the flu. It can make it so that you don't get those particular strains. It can help you from spreading it from another person to another person. There's a lot of stuff that people don't understand about the flu vaccine. They think, oh, I got it and then I immediately got sick. Well, typically if you have a reaction within 30 minutes, that's usually an allergic reaction. They probably shouldn't be getting the flu vaccine for health purposes.
Well, people don't realize either is that they're just estimating on what those strands are going to be.
Exactly.
So just because you get it, it doesn't mean it's going to cover. Like last year, wasn't it last year, the year before, that they were completely wrong on the strands,
Yeah,
which is why everybody was sick?
Calculated on, was it one of the B strains? I can't remember.
I don't remember exactly, but
Yeah.
they were off, and then everybody still got sick, and then they were like, it doesn't work, but it's...
And they definitely did not handle that particularly well of announcing it to the public. They could have done much better, but yeah.
I think in situations like that, you kind of just have to own that you messed up, be like, sorry, we got it wrong.
Yeah, well, I don't think it was that. I think it was mainly they were saying, like, don't get the flu shot because it'll cause the flu, and don't get the flu shot because it doesn't work at all.
Right.
When in reality, it wasn't that it didn't work at all. It just it didn't cover as many strains that were happening that year as they had first thought. So, fun stuff, vaccines.
Ugh.
All right, does anybody have any other questions or anything about the assignment or anything we talked about?
Nope.
No,
Okay.
I haven't even looked at it. I'm going to be honest there.
I'm with
Yeah,
you.
it's really not that bad. I just didn't like an hour and a half, and I feel good about it. So hopefully, especially if you know a lot about vaccines already, that would be really helpful. You don't have to go find sources or anything. All right. So if nobody has any
I
other
like to
questions,
do things at the last moment.
yeah. All right. I can stop this, and then you can just use the. It says you can use the rest of the allotted time to work on your assignment or anything. So I'll post this, and we don't have one next week. But I believe we do the week after.
Yes.
So does anyone want to do it in 2 weeks?
I met my quota.
I would volunteer, but it's just really hard with me not knowing for sure if I'm. That's why I never volunteered.
All right,
Yeah.
so rock, paper, scissors.
Just throwing that out there because I get.
Oh, how about you just volunteer for next week or for 2 weeks, and I'll take one after.
I don't think there's one after. I think this is the last one.
Oh, that's exciting.
Wow.
So I'll do it.
Okay. It's really not that bad. I was like super freaked out, but it's really not that bad. The instructions are in there.
All right.
Thank
All
you.
right, sounds good. Thanks, everybody. Have a good Thanksgiving.
You
See ya.
too.